Good evening and welcome to another edition of Mek We Chat. It's Thursday evening. It's the 15th day of August. We apologize for our delayed start, but it's because of some technical issues that we were having. Come up from nowhere, sometimes clearly. But we're here again. I'm Jerry George, your host, and on behalf of all of our suspects, we have majority of them in the house tonight, but this evening in particular, we are missing producer Beverly Sinclair, who is working on a document she has to get finished tonight. So, folks, do you think she has enough reason to that we should give her a blind?
Well, yeah, she can for the simple reason that she's always
Oh,
here.
very
Unlike
convenient. So,
unlike some people whose name we will not call. You know what I mean, Catherine?
Yeah,
We're not
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
call these
So she can
people's name.
excuse.
all
So
That's
she's
details
okay.
excused tonight.
Yeah,
perfect.
that's fine.
Because if it was
Yeah.
me, I'd never get the blind. But it's okay, we'll take the blind. So, George Grant is usually at the controls. We have Margaret Francis, we have Catherine there in London too. We had on app, and
Yes, he'll be back. Oops.
Dwyer is back. So we have Dwyer back. Um, Dwyer, is that better? Dwyer? Probably not hearing us yet.
Yeah.
And then we
Yeah.
had that earlier. As again, folks,
Yeah.
it's a couple of technical issues that we're having. But hopefully, in the process of the evening, we should have everything going for you. As usual, on Mek We Chat is when we look at some of the issues around the Caribbean in particular, and we give you a sense of what exactly is taking place. And we have had some interesting stories around the region uh, already. So perhaps we have this evening, we want to look at young McDonald's farm or the new McDonald's farm in Trinidad. We want to also look at the CBI monies in Dominica, and that's where we hope that actually gets cracking.
At right.
And Grenada has been borrowing from the for budget support, $118 million, a significant
Mm-hmm.
money.
Wow.
We could very well begin in Grenada.
Yes.
You want us to do
I
that,
guess we can. Where's George?
George?
George? Oh, I see
George,
George is there
George is
picking
there
on
doing some
something.
technical bits and
Yeah.
pieces. I can see him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some stuff. Anyway, on Friday, in the midst of carnival celebration, the government went to Parliament, and as most people would know and remember, Dwyer, are you with us? Dwyer?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes, sir.
Grenada went to Parliament on Friday in the midst of carnival to get budget support of $118 million. I think what most people have found significant about that is that we had a report not so long ago in which the Prime Minister was saying that revenues have been the best in the first 6 months of the year. So it really begs the question. And another thing that we have to remember that since Grenada's last problems, fiscal problems, that is, and their IMF program, they now have a fiscal responsibility legislation in place, which means that whenever the government is going to take any kind of fiscal action, they have to do so knowing that there are laws that now commit them or deny them access to it. And most of the other countries without fiscal um, responsibility legislation, and we see now these days what the IMF is doing is that every time a country gets into trouble, the IMF is literally forcing their hand to put this legislation in place so that countries have a better sense of their responsibility with respect to how they treat with the nation's finances. What happened in the past is that governments, especially when it came up to election time, government will go and they will spend like there's nobody's business and put the country in deeper financial difficulty. And I think I've noticed that most times, you see at the point back, most times, especially if the government probably thinks it's going to lose the election, they spend out the treasury. Well,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
fiscal responsibility legislation is hopefully to take care of that kind of behavior. I don't know if anybody Margaret, I don't know if you know, in the case of Grenada, how this $118 million fits into the picture.
I'm not sure because I was preoccupied with other stuff and I sort of like missed. Glimpsed the debate going on today and I sort of like missed the
Oh,
whole set of stuff.
it was preoccupied carnival, is that it?
No, 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 no. If
More
it was
serious
carnival, that
than
was
that.
all good. Yeah, if it was carnival, that would have been all good. Yeah, but so I didn't have all the details, so that's why I was hoping that George would have been able to sort of like fill us in on that. But you're right.
George, are you hearing us? Because I know he was caught up doing some
Yeah,
stuff, but I think he doesn't
yeah,
have.
he was doing some stuff. Yeah,
George? No, he's really
yeah,
talking about something else. Yeah.
I don't think
yeah.
he's
No,
hearing
I think he
us.
said yeah, yeah. I think he said he wasn't. Yeah, apparently yeah,
About,
there's like a delay.
about it, as I say, is
Yeah,
um, in fact, let me just read for you if I could pull it up quickly what the IMF said about Grenada's debt. It said Grenada's debt sustainability outlook has continued to improve, but the external risk rating remains, quote, in debt distress. So, really and truly, Grenada's gross public debt, they say it's on a downward trajectory. But if that is true, you have to ask yourself, why then is the government going back into borrowing so much money? Because $180 million is a lot of money.
that's a lot of money. Yeah.
A lot of money.
I don't get it
And
either. And who's going to be paying this back?
as usual, the
A
taxpayer,
hundred and how much million?
118. This is
18.
as budget support, This is additional, this is outside of the budget.
But you're only talking
A
money
lot
here.
of money.
That's small money, man.
Yeah? This is not Dominica where you guys talk in billions. Because, but you have to tell us more about that one. For us down in these islands down here, that is big money. But yes.
Yeah, but I was wondering, did
Mhm.
he explain what area he need the money for? What area he need to
Yeah,
spend this money
the
for?
different areas, and I just for some reason couldn't get the documentation. Well,
Oh,
it's in
right.
part because of the problems I've been having anyway.
Oh,
Um,
right.
but yes, it has. They have outlined some of the areas, and that's why I know George spoke to some people. I think on Sunday, and that's why I was hoping that George would give us some support there.
Oh,
But George is clearly otherwise preoccupied with something else.
mm-hmm.
Anyhow,
Yeah.
you cut it though, I still think that if you have a budget in place, and for you to come back and say you need another $118 million is a lot of money.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
care
a
how you,
that's a lot of although you cut it, it's a lot of money.
it's a lot of
And
money.
the reality, I mean, there is nothing here honestly to justify that or to generate the income, the type of income to even begin to
That's the
repay
thing,
that
Margaret.
That's
kind
what
of
I was
debt.
thinking. Because when you think
What
about
is
how many
done?
people employ in the country at the moment who are paying taxes, I don't know how that can justify that amount of money. I don't know how they're going to, we wouldn't be able to pay that money back anyway.
Well, it has to,
Yes, sir.
no matter how you cut it, it has to be paid back. That's the key. It has to be paid back. And one of the issues that is always at stake with this is the debt to GDP ratio, meaning how much does your debt relate to how much you're earning? Because there is this in most of these islands, the IMF looks at 60% of your GDP should be if you have debt that relates to that, it's fine. That's what they say, although they want it to come down, but they have set that as a kind of a benchmark. Grenada coming out of its own fiscal situation where it got past the 100% point at one stage is said to be on a downward trajectory. But how does this new information relate to that? The IMF says growth has remained strong, reflecting external tailwinds and the fruits of past reforms. The outlook is promising, but is subject to downside risks. The focus of policy should shift towards making growth more sustainable. And I'm reading from the IMF Article 4, 2019. 2019 report. So to shift towards making growth more sustainable, resilient, and inclusive, fiscal policy should balance further progress in debt reduction against a gradual rise of well-earned fiscal space to close the country's infrastructure and resilience gaps, in tandem with capacity and efficiency improvement to bolster the impact on growth. So the IMF is saying, okay, fine, you're moving in the right direction, yes, but one of the things we want you to pay attention to is keeping your debt down. So I would like me
Exactly.
to hear how how you get that. But I think is this money coming from the World Bank?
That's what I was wondering. I mean,
I think this is money coming from the World Bank, which in a sense
I
is probably the best thing that is happening in the sense that if it's coming from the World Bank, it means that the interest rates are lower. Because what a lot of Caribbean governments have done in recent time is to go to the commercial banks and borrow, which means
right.
that the interest rates on the payment is high. So if this is from the World Bank, it's not a bad thing in that regard if it's debt. But it's debt. And as I say, um, obviously the government has met the financial responsibility legislation because other than that they would not be able to borrow. But it does beg the question, what went so wrong with the last budget? Why are we here?
Well, can
But
I ask some questions?
Yes,
mhm.
well,
What is the budget for 2019 in Grenada? I don't know if anybody knows the answer to that.
I could find that.
No.
I have all the
Um,
quotes up there, but I had to take them down when I was having
does
problems.
anybody know the reason for this approach?
I think do I look as
Frozen.
though he got
I was really having
Frozen.
some problem there this evening. I could tell that.
yeah.
It sounds more like it is an issue of the internet there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Dwyer is frozen. Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually have the budget statement, but not
Okay, so I was just able to pull.
have it.
No, I don't. Let me see. Hold on a minute. Hold on. Let me see. Hmm. Okay, so let me see. I'm trying to see if I can pull some document. Dwyer seems to be having some problems, some documentation here.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Supplementary
yeah, that's
budget.
dropped off. Yeah.
Supplementary appropriate was also tabled for an amount.
What I do know about the budgets was in the billions. That much I know. But
Yeah,
but I had to clear my deck when I was having a problem a while ago.
yeah. I'm kind of like scrolling through here to see if I can find anything, but I'm not seeing anything because there was that email that came out sort of yeah, but I don't have that figure at hand.
Mhm. I have the whole budget speak, but
I
the
don't
whole
have it.
question of going through it right now
Yeah.
is not
Hmm.
a thing. So let me see if I could pull back these stuff into budget presentations. Um,
I have a question in the meantime.
yeah, go ahead.
The most budgets are driven by a plan, a strategy. What in is there a plan that is proposed that one could say, okay, if that plan is proceeded with, you're going to generate the output and the product that would allow for a matter like this to be handled comfortably. Um, what is the plan? Is there a plan in the budget? Is there a plan laid out for sector agriculture to produce to grow from this level to that, tourism to grow by this number? You know, a budget is not just the numbers. It is the numbers as they relate to the plan that is proposed by the government for for keeping the economy going or getting the economy moving. What's the plan?
And you're absolutely right in that regard. I think also what has caught a lot of us out is that this all came like on the weekend, and
Exactly.
there has not been much discussions about this particular aspect. And it's interesting that the government chose that time um, to do it because the 2019 budget was built on building resilience, advancing social development, and transforming our economy. That's the rubric on which the budget for 2019 was built.
Yes.
I'm still trying to find the actual figure of the budget. Like, wait,
Yeah. I think Jerry made a good
Like,
point about the time that this was released on Friday when everybody was distracted and it's likely to get lost in the weekend news cycle kind of stuff. Nobody's paying
it was not just
attention.
the weekend news cycle, because sometimes we do that as publicists in the weekend news cycle, but it
Hmm.
was carnival, which just makes it even more.
Exactly. Exactly. Nobody who was paying attention. First off, most people don't pay attention to budgets, and you do something like that makes it even worse. They're already distracted by carnival, so they don't give. They
Carnival,
don't care.
Carnival is on now.
No, carnival is done.
Oh, it's done. Okay.
It's done, but I guess between yesterday and today, they're too tired to listen to the debate.
Hmm.
No,
So
but
because
no, there's no further debate. I mean, remember
right.
that everything was done and passed in the House on Friday, so there's no further debate on this matter. This is a done
Oh,
deal.
really?
All right. Let me read from the Prime Minister's budget statement 2019. Mr. Speaker, public debt as a ratio of GDP has progressively declined in the past 5 years, declining from 188% of GDP in 2013 to an estimated 62.7% by the end of 2080. It is projected to further reduce to 55% of GDP by the end of 2020, surpassing the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank's target of 60%, 10 years ahead of the 2030 decline. Mr. Speaker, it is important for the nation to appreciate the process undertaken to project the debt numbers. The Ministry of Finance conducted a debt sustainability analysis, which determined the government's ability to sustain its current debt levels. This analysis then used to inform the medium-term debt management strategy that is laid before this Honorable House. Mr. Speaker, the 2018 budget presented was historic because for the first time, a debt management strategy was laid in our Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I'm extremely happy to report that all of our debt management activity for the past year was consistent with the medium-term debt management strategy 2018 to 2019. I guess if you read all of this, the Prime Minister say, listen, we have the space to borrow.
No, but he's only talking about one side of the ledger there, Jerry, which is the payment side, the debt
I hear
service
you.
side. What I'm interested in, I don't know if this was where Dwyer was going. I see Dwyer's back. Um, what's about the other side of the ledger? The investment side. I mean, and the growth side, and the rate
Okay.
of
So
return
let me
side.
give you the summary.
That
The summary.
that's the only way we can have a really intelligent discussion.
Right. Let me give you the summaries as we're given, right? The current revenues of 780.4 million. Recurrent expenditure was 637.8 million. So right away, revenues exceed expenditure. The
Yeah.
current account surplus is 142.7 million. Capital expenditure is 196.4 million. The primary surplus after grants, 201.9 million. Overall surplus after grants, 129.9 million. And principal repayment amortizations is 299.8 million. The point being, if you look at these numbers, um, if you have that surplus, why did you really need to go towards a loan?
Well,
It's
that's the reason for the inquiry about where the revenue comes from. What
exactly.
generated the surplus? Was it, for instance, the sale of passports, the sale of yams, the sale of, processed items? Was it tourism arrivals and tourism spending increasing per guest, etc.? In other words, macro data, big numbers, large numbers that cover, everything, tend to be meaningless unless really dissected against what contributes to those numbers. Even debt service, where did you sacrifice investment in certain critical areas of your economy in order to service your debt? Which is what the IMF would probably drive you to do. You say, oh, you need to up your debt service. That means cutting back on education, cutting back on healthcare, and so on. What? So that's where the debate should be engaged, but it needs to be based on the availability of that kind of information.
That's what I'm thinking.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
But
Agreed, but that kind of information is not readily available
That's it.
here.
Really,
That
really.
wasn't that information wasn't disclosed to the public. It just
Mm, no.
Jerry,
Because hmm?
Jerry,
yes, go ahead. Uh-huh.
I fell out. I'm sorry about that. Um,
Good to have you back in, bro.
Thank you. Did you find out what the $118 million or whatever it is intended to do?
We've been trying
Mm,
we've been
we've been trying to find,
problem. The problem
yeah.
here is that
Okay,
this happened on Friday, and
I
everything.
understand, but let
No,
me
hold
ask
on,
you. Okay, go
hold on.
ahead.
Let me
Sorry.
complete the point. This happened on Friday, and from Friday till yesterday, basically, it was carnival. So
Mm-hmm.
there hasn't been enough time to really have sufficient
Okay.
discussion and further explanation on this matter. I think that's really what's missing.
Yeah, and apparently, based on what I saw here, there seems to be nobody seems to know what exactly that $118,000 is for.
It's
Million.
in Parliament, It's
Million,
in
million,
Parliament,
yeah.
and it's not it's not reported for sure.
Mm,
Well, that will
yeah.
come to the surface.
Hmm.
People will find out what that money is for. Now, let me just suggest something here. You can have money and still borrow
Hmm.
because the money you have might be generating you interest or other returns that makes it prudent for you to leave that money where it is and go and borrow money to do something else. The question is, what is that other thing? Those numbers you gave there from the budget with the primary surplus and things like that, those are very good sounding details.
Yeah.
They sound very good. And it's good to have backup money for resiliency and other contingencies and so forth. But also, if you find yourself, you see some governments around here like to boast about their primary surpluses, about how well they are running the economies. When we know, and I'm not pointing a finger at Grenada, when we know that there are so many deficiencies in the core areas of need, energy, education, health, food safety, water safety, the environment, and so forth. And then they go and borrow money, and that money is put into a perversely prioritized system, which it is, it's perverse. If the priorities are not right, it's perverse. And so it leads me to ask you a cynical question. How far out are we from elections in Grenada?
And not close.
Not close. So this
Not
can't be
close.
part of the election exercise like they have to do roads and so.
Okay, I
Um,
find it. I find the information.
okay.
The 118 million is borrowed from the World Bank to support the CASIP project and other initiatives.
The what project?
The CASIP. Now, CASIP is a project where they're trying to digitize and transform the public service so that we move towards a more digital environment.
E-government.
Yeah.
That's going to cost $118 million?
Well, it says, I'm reading, again, I'm reading. I'm just trying to pick this stuff up as we go.
Uh-huh.
Minister Bowen says the World Bank and various ministries have looked at the projects under CASIP, which include the digitization and transformation of public service, and they are ready to move forward once authorization is given. So
Mhm.
we already have the loan agreement, but in order to access the funds, we cannot borrow more than what was approved previously. So we must come back here, and we are coming back under this loan authorization resolution to ensure that we have permission to accept $3 more billion.
Billion?
That is what I'm reading here.
Billion, you said,
I'll tell you what I'm reading here.
I don't figure, I can't figure that one out.
No,
Yeah,
no, no.
another 1.3. Hold on, let probably read from the top of the article because I was trying to. It's a long article. It might not be
Mhm.
the best.
Anyway, my read of it is
Mhm.
I wouldn't condemn just off the top a situation
No, no,
like
and
this.
I don't mean it to be a condemnation. What I
No,
would
and I'm
like
not suggesting
is
you are.
explanation.
Yes, yeah. And I do believe that with an active media, and I don't know how active the opposition is in Grenada and regionally, then explanations will be extracted and discussions will take place on this because $118 million is a significant sum of money.
But if it's going towards technology, as it says here, I'm reading this here, then I could understand why it's significant. Uh, Coming from the World Bank, I suspect also that it's monies that is coming with fairly minimal interest repayment. Uh, you just wondered why it was hustled through on a day like Friday. It just leaves questions there.
Yeah, I think the question is what exactly are they trying to hide?
Six
Well, I
hundred
mean,
dollars, 600,000 will support the work of the Integrity Commission. We are topping up the NIS pension funds to ensure that these retirees receive at least 70% of their last salary. In other words, Mr. Speaker, we don't have a dispute on pension. What we have a dispute is what is being introduced as gratuity. So I know the big issue that this government has been the pension issue, which has had particularly teachers out. So the government saying, hey, we're doing something about that with some of this money. 1 million
Exactly.
for the procurement of pharmaceuticals is also budgeted for, according to Dr. Mitchell, particularly for the treatment of cancer and kidney diseases.
that's included in the
In the
100.
180?
Well, I could
No,
even say that. As I say, I'm just doing all of this as we go. 1.3
Right.
million was listed as expenditure in salaries for nurses.
so it's a kind of a it's a plugging holes kind of amount figure. I
Yeah,
mean,
clearly.
uh,
Outside of the CASIC
facility.
project, which obviously take up the majority of the
Mhm.
funding, these are the other things that have been brought on board. Support
Yeah.
for the Integrity Commission, support for the pension funding, support for pharmaceuticals, support for nurses' salaries. Interesting, interesting.
Um,
Anyway, let's take our first break and we'll come back. Let's take a
I
break and
think
let's come back. Okay?
um I think probably we need to continue, Jerry. George had we're still having some technical hiccups here.
Oh, George is still okay. He's still
Yeah,
okay.
that he's trying to resolve. So maybe what
Okay.
we could do is just say hi to those of our listeners who are joining us on social media and get some of their comments in.
Please.
Yes. So hi, John Kennison is here. He's saying good night. And let's see. He said in reference to the 9 million, it's is allocated. So what's the rest for?
It's allocated to.
He didn't. Yeah, I'm not sure, but he said only 9 million is allocated. So what's the rest for?
hmm.
I just said it. The
Yeah, yeah.
9.9 seems to be allocated to the question of pension support, pharmaceutical support,
Right.
etc. But the majority of the fund seems to be for the CASIC project. That's what I'm reading from this.
Okay. And
Um,
then.
Go ahead.
Okay. No. And then he went on to say, I listened to Senator Steele trying to explain it badly on the radio today. Laughing out loud. Yeah. And
So
then
they had a cabinet briefing today.
yeah,
Ah,
they were in session today. There was some debate going on in Parliament today. Because when I was
okay.
sailing through town, I saw it on television, but I didn't stop to listen. Kiblen Francis says there does not need to be a reason to borrow money. He is the boss, and he knows he won't be around to pay it back. He will let he will let me win to clean up the mess again. So that's from Kipling, and then John Kinnison comes back and says, "It amazes me how we always do better than the projected figures, and then you want to go and borrow."
And that is part of the reason why. But then, as Dwyer said it, that maybe you leave the surplus because the surplus is always a good thing, especially when people like the IMF wander around, and you borrow against it.
But Jerry, let me clarify. Let me give it some perspective. If you have substantial surpluses consistently, unless you are disbursing funds and deploying resources in the direction of the fundamental developmental needs of the country and its people, then you're holding on to too much money, and it means you must reduce taxes. Okay? So this is an aspect of this discussion that is required as more information comes forward, because all of these pretty surpluses and primary surpluses and that sort of thing need to be discussed.
Monies, you know.
Well, $200 million primary surplus.
Yes, significant money.
I mean, if then you go and look at your debt servicing and see what your actual surplus is. I am sure it will still be significant. What's the state?
The principal repayment, debt servicing is 2.99 million. The overall surplus after grant is 1.29 million. So anyhow you look at it, the only question I have here, as I always do these budget exercises, is the actual capital expenditure at nearly $200 million. You always have to ask yourself, does the government really expend that kind of money, especially in a country where, for example, a lot of the development is based on the CBI program? Is the government putting part of that as part of its capital expenditure?
Yes. You will see a lot of capital expenditure items in these budget estimates and documents. Source of funding, grant, whether it's Taiwan or China or whoever it may be, or your citizenship fund. A lot of these, you'll see $200 million, and I will bet you at least 40% of that is anticipated to come from some grant source. So all of these countries use a citizenship program for budgetary and capital support.
But you've been in the parliament, Dwyer. Does these countries really have the ability to spend $200 million in capital expenditure in a year?
Yes, it's possible.
Really?
It just depends.
Think it through, because we have to talk about the development of the projects, finding sufficient people with the skills to carry out the projects. $200 million you're talking about?
It depends on your circumstances. Suppose you're recovering from, God forbid, a hurricane.
Right.
You have to rebuild hospitals and schools, residences. You have to do roads and other infrastructure. Before you blink twice, you could reach $200 million.
No, I take that. I get that. But that's what I will call as a special circumstance.
Of course. But you asked, and I give you an answer.
Islands to spend $200 million. Look. Let me tell you why I'm thinking this through. The
200 million on a $600 or $700 million budget is a lot of money, and that takes some explaining.
Exactly.
Because it's a third or just a little less than a third of the overall budgetary number.
That's why I'm pointing it out. And the second thing about that is this: you had the country building Silver Sands Hotel. When they came to the actual finishing of the Silver Sands Hotel, they didn't have workers with skills to do it. So I'm talking now about putting the projects together, executing the projects. Spending $200 million in a year is a lot of money.
Oh, it is.
It's not as simple to do as most people think it is. It's not.
I agree.
And it gets more complicated if, as they say, they want to do it in a way that builds the resilience of the economy to withstand and recover from natural and other disasters. Because spending money on roads, as Dwyer is hinting at, is very easy to do. It's very easy to rack up the numbers. But if you
Yes.
build roads the same old way, that will crack and crumble and pothole and not drain well in the same old way, then in fact you're not investing smartly in those roads.
Correct.
You're
Correct.
wasting money. You're
Correct.
setting yourself up for having to go and borrow to do those things. If you're going to build homes and rebuild public facilities, office buildings and other ports and so in the same old way as opposed to using modern, sustainable technologies and materials and skills, you're setting the next generation up for a fall. So that's why I'm still interested in what is the strategy, what is the plan. It's not a matter of just how you're going to spend $200 million in a year. What are you spending it on?
Of course.
And who's going to manage, who's going to regulate, who's going to intervene if there's a misstep in a particular public sector project and so on. So because poured concrete can collapse just like anything else if you pour it badly. So I'm suggesting a proper assessment of the validity of the need to borrow is based on also a review of these collateral considerations. And then finally, I would say, I mean, I'm always looking in the national budgets for the regional component. We all talk about regional this and regional that, where there's a certain economies of scale to be had if we did things together. The OECS pharmaceuticals purchasing program was one of the success stories and so. But I'm interested, where in that budget do we see an expression of fiscal and financial commitment to strengthening regional collaboration, whether it be in LEAD, whether it be in pharmaceuticals or sports or wherever. Because if it doesn't happen at that national level, then there's nothing to consolidate regionally, and we're still back to fighting separate battles. I'm
But,
Agree.
concerned.
but I think you put that way. Let me add something to that. Look at the 1 million for the procurement of pharmaceuticals is also budgeted according to Dr. Mitchell, particularly for the treatment of cancer and the kidney disease patients. What you tend to find
That can't be
happening,
enough.
no,
That's what I
That
just,
cannot
thought.
be enough.
just kidneys alone will wipe out that
That can't be
number,
enough.
because
The
you
job.
talk about dialysis, which is a very expensive process.
Right.
But I was going to say this, that oftentimes what I've found is that the pharmaceutical um, purchasing, the government usually owe that thing so much money, it's unbelievable. I can ask a question, yeah, how much of this $1 million is for outstanding payment?
And
Yeah,
Jerry, who owns the companies that provide these pharmaceuticals into that sub-regional unit? Who own these companies?
Good question, I don't know.
I have,
Check
yeah,
it out.
I have
You're
no
a
idea.
journalist.
Oh, you know the answer, do I?
Well, just check it out.
I'll check
Listen,
it, don't worry, I'll
listen.
leave you, I'll check it.
No,
Some
but
some of
I,
us
I,
can be cynical and say, just to follow up on what.
Do I dropped out again? I think that is really having some
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
having
having
it's
some
good.
problems.
problems tonight.
technique. But I would
Please.
add to the queries that Dwyer started making another level of query. Purchase of pharmaceuticals is about, if you will, one type of response to health. What about the more sensible, sustainable, integrated approach to health in terms of nutrition, in terms of producing some of our own local pharmaceuticals and generating agro-processing of pharmaceuticals in other words, if we're really serious about breaking with the past, even if it's $100,000, it must begin to be registered in the line items of the budget. That is what I am looking for, among other things.
But I think there's another aspect to that that I know manifested itself some years ago. I don't know where it's at now. But where, for example, it was found that St. Vincent was using the majority of insulin. And when they checked it, is that the doctors were simply putting people on insulin and leaving them there.
Hmm.
Mm.
which had its compounded problems going down.
Yeah.
So yes, we have these things we purchase together to make it easy and all the rest of it. But you asked the question earlier about the whole question of how is it managed?
Yes.
How is it monitored?
Yes.
Are we really getting there's the only aspect of getting savings financially is not the only aspect that we should be looking at. We should be looking at also what data can we get from all of the countries to tell us, as you are quite rightly suggesting, to tell us what is the nature of diabetes across the region. All that
Good.
should come out of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a classic issue of support to critical to critical regional institutions like the medicine, the medical schools, and so forth and so on. So, a budget is a budget is a budget, but it somewhere or
But
leave
you would know that better than anybody in Dominica. You'd know that. Jeez.
yeah, yeah, and that
We can take a break, but I don't know if anybody has because George is still not is clearly having some other issues. But I don't know if anybody else has more to say on this issue in terms of the budget in general terms before we move on to
Mm.
the next issue.
No, nah, I don't. No, I don't have anything else going on. I can give you some more of the responses from our listeners.
Sure,
hmm
absolutely.
So, Ryan Jabon says, "Good evening. It's been said that you can't bankrupt a country, so borrow Grenada." And then he said, I think Ryan's just being facetious here. And then he says, "Nah, structural adjustment, so more taxes."
yeah,
And
generally,
yep.
yeah.
And then Kipling comes back and he says,
No, no, hold a second,
we're
Margaret, for me, please. I missed that structural adjustment.
structural." He says, "So structural adjustment, so more taxes."
Generally
Because I
means that.
guess generally means more
Yeah,
taxes if you
but
have a,
that's
yeah,
why I stopped you because, in a sense, Grenada had literally should have graduated somewhat out of the deep part of the
the
structural
last,
adjustment.
yeah,
Because if I
yeah.
look at these
Yeah.
figures, I have to give them credit. If I look at these figures tells me that Grenada has been managing and doing well. So I wouldn't necessarily put the question of structural adjustment. I think what I was saying, in light of these figures, there could be, maybe there should be more tax easing. I think that's the point that I was making.
But
Possibly.
those figures don't necessarily
Yes,
mean
what she
that
said.
you're doing better. Those figures are just figures.
I agree with
I
you,
mean,
but yeah, listen, Ati,
where the rubber hits the road, that's where we fail. Where the
Ati,
rubber hits
yes,
the
Ati,
road
but why you think those figures are given? Those figures are given to give the
yeah,
country
to give
comfort
the
that things are
impression,
better.
to give
So
the
let's take
impression.
it from that perspective.
Yeah, and they do a pretty good job at that, but it is the farmer, the laborer, the nurse, the bus driver, the mother trying to send two children to school. That's where the rubber hits the road in terms of performance of economy. If the performance, if those good figures don't trickle into these areas of life of the people, then you'll have what you have, which is while the leaders claim we're doing very well, and they spend money to convince the population that they're doing well, the population does not necessarily feel the benefit of figures that appear to be headed in the right direction unless you do that ground up assessment. How many new jobs? How many longer lasting jobs? How many, how many buildings last year sustained the effects of storms much better than 10 years ago, etc., etc., etc. These are really critical indicators of a growing economy in terms of sensible and sustainable growth.
But it's interesting though that Grenada doesn't seem to prance up a lot on their CBI program.
Hmm.
I see Margaret looking at the puzzle there. Do they?
Really, you're right. I haven't heard a whole lot.
No.
I guess they had some bad publicity with that, so maybe they're playing on the down low for the moment.
But
They
Dominica
had
have
some
plenty of
shady.
bad publicity that have stopped them.
Well, everybody responds differently, yeah.
They need to get some
And
publicity from Ati.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think Dominica has more. Um, gumption,
Yes,
maybe.
exactly.
We
See,
need, we need to share some of our policy making gangsters with Grenada. That's what we
No, I think Grenada has enough. They don't need any more.
but
They
having
don't need any
to give
more.
Grenada its credit, Grenada have been trying, I would say, to keep it
Yeah.
clean because I know for a fact I've been told from insiders that people who have been rejected by Grenada have been laughed up by Dominica. And Grenada
Mm-hmm.
rejected them because Grenada had concerns. So that should tell you everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Take anybody.
yeah.
And some new information that came out this week explains exactly how we've been doing that.
Okay, George is back.
Right.
George, you want us to take a break? George?
Well,
You
probably we
could take
could
a
just
break and
take
then
the
come back.
remaining
And we'll come
comments.
back to
You
Dominica.
want to do the? Okay,
Right, George?
okay.
Give me a signal. Yeah, George looks like he's working and let's have a break.
No, no, no. Yeah, I think because of the hiccups that they're having,
What,
he's experienced.
we're having some
Yeah,
what? Some
some
communications of.
hiccup. Yeah, I
Right.
think
Oh,
Why is the
on the
one with
back end.
internet problem? So,
oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Because I'm hearing kind of voices and other noises in the background. I don't know if it's just me,
okay.
but I'm hearing like there's a radio station.
Mm-mm. Only you. I'm not hearing those for sure.
You're not
It's
hearing it.
gone.
No, I'm not hearing
It's
those.
No, I
gone.
was hearing. It's gone now. But I was
It's
hearing it as well. Yeah,
okay. All right.
yeah.
Yeah, man.
So, George, can you hear us?
Sure, sure.
Ooh, you're not hearing.
I think George is on the ads. You think he's taking the break? Is the
Yeah,
break
okay.
Sure,
on Facebook,
sure.
Margaret?
Are we sure that we're taking
Take
it?
off your mute, Margaret.
No, there's no commercial on.
There's no.
So we're still live.
Oh, we're still live. Okay, I thought George was going there. Anyway, let's continue. We have our issues, but let's keep it going. So let's go back now. Let's go to Dominica now. You say you had some new information. Dominica has been quite some uproar for the last 2 weeks over this question of where the money gone.
Yeah, we've been trying to find out where the money has gone. The Prime Minister this week did in fact agree publicly that had he put all the money in the Treasury, we would have had a $2 billion budget. And so of course the question was so okay, so you didn't put it in the budget, you didn't report it, you didn't account for it. So where is it? And that's where the conversation got really interesting because the person who responded was not the Prime Minister, but was the head of Montreal Management Consultants, which is a firm with offices in Dubai and Toronto that appears to have had a relationship with the Ministry of Finance that we did not even know about prior to Tropical Storm Erica.
Really?
Yes, yeah, that just came out this week. Yeah, and so that when Tropical Storm Erica hit, that firm was ahead of all the other actors. They were already selling passports. They had already sold over 500 passports. They had not been listed as an agent, a passport selling agent or CBI agent. But so they hit the ground running. And after Tropical Storm Erica, there was a kind of a sympathy buy, a sympathy purchasing wave that hit Dominica, where a number of people felt, well, now would be a good time. It will also help the country, and I'll get my passport, etc., etc. But it turns out that by 1 year after Tropical Storm Erica, 2016, when a couple of villages had to be relocated and houses had to be built, that company was assigned. I say assigned because there was no tender, there was no open bidding, nobody knew. They just ended up being the persons given the contract to build about 1,000 homes. And they were the ones who went in and reportedly purchased some 49 acres of land to relocate 2 villages in the south of the island that had been impacted by Tropical Storm Erica, and they started building. They started building, and we were told today they started building houses without the benefit of a contract with the government, but they started building anyhow, and they were building. And so where did that money come from? It didn't come from the government. So that money, we have found out, came from revenue from the sale of citizenship and passports.
I think I want to put down something, and I'm going to let you continue, right? I'm going to let you continue. But it's something I need us to put to bed. You see, this distinction that we're trying to make between the monies that go into the treasury and the other monies, making it sound like the disposal of those other monies is optional. All those monies, once they have come in as a result of some action or
That's
some
right.
policy of the government, belongs to
the
country.
state. Belongs to the state.
And
Whether
this of trying to cut it up,
whether it goes into the treasury or whether it goes into an escrow account, because when Eugenia was in office, they did set up escrow accounts that were specific to certain projects, like the Layo
Right.
River Hotel. But these escrow accounts will only, if you will, accessible with a signature of, in her case, she assigned the Attorney General of the country to be the other signature that would allow, together with this, the
money.
Absolutely, because it is the country's money, even in escrow.
Yes.
So that is what we discovered this week, with that there had been an adjustment to that arrangement. An escrow account was set up for Montreal management, into which they were putting all the resources that they were getting from the sale of passports. All those resources were going to that escrow account. There was no known public official assigned a signature on that account. There was no reporting on that account. There was no accounting. It never appeared in the Auditor General's report. And we still don't know exactly how many citizens were brought into the fold under the Montreal Management Sales Initiative. So we have no idea.
Hold on. I don't know if it was involuntary, but I saw Dwyer shaking his head. Dwyer, you seem to disagree.
I do disagree.
Well, go ahead, Dwyer.
Yeah. If the investment is in a real estate project or in a corporate entity that does a development or something else, that investment is in the development. Yes, it is true. And I don't know, I'm not an expert on the Dominica law. But if you, for example, buying unit number 100 at Athens International Resort at Fonkole, you have to put X amount of dollars in your escrow account, which in Dominica law may be an account held by an authorized agent or approved person. And when there is certification of completion of the project, then the funds can be handed over to the developer. But that money that goes into bricks and mortar to build the facility is not the government's money. It cannot be the government's money.
Yeah, but
it is in this sense, Dwyer.
Hold on for me. I agree with that. What I am still saying, it is monies attracted by the government into the country.
It is not the government's money, though, Jerry.
No, let's not.
The administrative.
Think about government.
No, I am not being pedantic. You're the one. Either you or Afi is the one who said that all of the money that comes in is government money. That cannot be the case.
No.
But here's why it is. Here's why.
Not of. Hold on. Let me make this very clear. It's monies that a government policy has attracted into the country.
So in other words, your government in St. Vincent has a policy which attracts me into the country with a $50 million investment. That's a good thing for the government. They have a good policy. I'm a clean, honest investor who wants to be a fair partner with the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in their economic and social development. Good kudos to the government. It's not the government's money. The government can attract administrative fees and other government fees and that sort of thing. That is the government's money.
Here's the difference, Dwyer, between the example you gave. The difference is that there is an asset that is being offered to that person who's making the investment, and that asset is a state-owned asset. The $200,000 that goes into the real estate fund, where if somebody does a real estate thing, is only going to do because the person in return is acquiring something that belongs to the state, for which the government is the steward.
And so the government and the state are getting something in return, the investment.
Well,
they're getting something in return, the investment.
But the asset that is being sold to the investor
is given in return for the asset that is built with the investor's money.
But the asset is a state-owned asset. It is this passport, it's this citizenship.
I understand that, Afi,
so the state has to report to the country.
I agree.
On every single dollar that comes in as a result of that scheme. And what I'm saying to you is that with regards to the MMC, the Montreal Management Team, there was no reporting. There still is no accounting of how many passports were sold, how much money came in, and how much money was invested in housing, which was given to them as an exclusive real estate portfolio.
That's another matter.
But so that's what I'm saying to you. I mean, there have been some innovative adjustments to the CBI program made by our people here that may not be the same thing in St. Kitts or Grenada or St. Vincent. So what I'm saying to you is, if you take a state asset, it's a passport, it's an asset, land is an asset, and so and you give it to an investor as an incentive to come in a sense, you're saying to the people of the country, we have used a national asset to attract this investment. Fine, the investment goes to a designated project, but we will report to you that so many of these investors came in against so many passports. The money went into this escrow account, and you can now see the results of that investment. We cannot see the results. When we do the numbers, some of these so-called, we are talking about housing units ranging in size from between 900 square feet to 1,200 square feet. These would have to end up costing hundreds of thousands of dollars if you needed to begin to account for the amount of money that MMC is now letting out that it has brought into the country. Okay? And so for us, there has been a gross abuse of the rules of the CBI, even according to what was on the CBI website for Dominica. There was no housing option stated, but there was now, this past week, we were told by our Prime Minister that MMC had exclusive on the housing option, and that option was doing better than the other two options. And listen to this now.
But you said the housing option is a new option?
It is now presented as a new option, but it's not listed as an option.
But I think the Dominica citizenship by investment regulations don't those regulations list 3 options for you to access citizenship by investment?
2.
Which are the 2?
Option 1, which is direct
Hey,
purchase. You invest.
donation.
You
Donation.
invest. You invest $100,000 in the diversification development fund. You get a passport, and that fund, which it goes straight to the treasury, is managed by the state according to selected projects. That's
Okay.
one.
Are you
Okay, hold,
acquainted
hold, hold,
with the
hold, guys,
second
hold,
Second,
one?
guys. George is
the
waiting for us
second
to get a
option.
hold, Ati. We're
Yeah.
still trying to get George in for a break. A break, George. So I think George is not going to do the break. There's
Yeah.
a real long delay on the system,
Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay,
that's what's
okay.
causing the
Yeah.
problem.
No
Okay.
problem. Yeah.
We have to blame Beverly for leaving her duppy behind him.
I know, right? She left that duppy behind. She
Yeah, man.
did that.
Must be a duppy or a gun, man.
No, what I hear
Well, we might still be. I
is
don't.
crickets.
Yeah.
Somebody has a
Oh
nice
yeah.
cricket orchestra available to them.
Yeah, I do.
I think that's
Thanks for
mine,
share.
eh? I think the
Thanks for
crickets are
sharing
mine.
us. Thanks for sharing.
I think the crickets are mine.
Hey, yeah.
And my
All
window
right.
is
Crickets
wide
are
open, and I think
mine.
that's them I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So is mine.
All right.
So
That's
is mine.
nice. So the Caribbean
So hey,
Cricket
George.
Orchestra.
Yeah. Somebody who dropped off. Oh, Dwyer. Dwyer keeps getting kicked out.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, George. I don't think has he hit the
You don't know how many hurricanes will be coming this season, so you need to be prepared. At Hubbard's Hardware and Building Supply Departments and Food Fair Supermarkets, everything from canned foods, flashlights and batteries, to plywood, tarpaulin, lanterns, roof repair kits, water tanks, etc. are available. For over 90 years, we've helped you prepare for and recover from storms. Hubbard's Hardware, Food Fair Supermarkets, and the Grenadian General Insurance, an integral part of your hurricane preparedness plan.
We are honored to partner with the Grenada Schools, Inc., the Ministry of Education, and the Caliste Government School in providing this library. GCPI program put $120,000 or 66% of the cost of the library. But it's not an investment that is intended to bring a financial return. It is an investment in the human capital of our youth in Grenada.
GRENLEC has shown us their seriousness about partnership, their seriousness about education, and their seriousness about nation building. That local partnership tells our major donors that Grenada is interested.
We have got a big vision at Grenada Schools. We believe that what we can do is, through literacy, have the most literate country in the Caribbean. We are very happy that you got this gift from ourselves and from GRENLEC.
We see this library as a unique and valuable resource. One of the best things about receiving this library is that it honors and recognizes the efforts and contributions of a company like GRENLEC and Grenada Schools Incorporated.
Since 1994, GRENLEC shareholders have invested over $22 million. This has been invested in the communities throughout Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. We hope this library will serve the students and school well for many years to come.
Studying too hard about back-to-school expenses? Co-op Bank is making back to school as easy as 1, 2, 3. Enjoy competitive interest rates, affordable monthly payments, speedy decisions on applications. Come in and apply today.
be struggling this evening with a few technical difficulties, but we are holding full because it's important for us to deliver to you this program in the best quality that we are allowed. Dwyer keeps dropping out, so he has internet problems, and we have other issues this evening, but we're here. We're not going to abandon you.
Yes.
Ati would make,
Yes.
no,
Yeah.
we have some
Yeah,
comments
I'll
first
just
from Margaret.
Yeah.
okay.
So yeah, so there are two comments here, just on what we're talking about now. One from Fitzroy Adams, and he says, "Good night. We have to ask ourselves where the Caribbean leaders are taking Caribbean countries." And then John says, "Athy, oil and gas are also assets, yet no one really knows who's getting their hands on them."
Mhm.
It's good, John.
True. But we should know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should know.
Absolutely should know.
Absolutely.
The history is a history of us not knowing, not being told.
But we have to,
Well,
we have to
we
break,
speak
we have
about
to break with that.
But we haven't been demanding to be told.
Well,
And that's
as
one of
we
the-
Right. I was just going to say that we need to demand.
that's the
Yeah.
point. We repeatedly bring up the point that it's not going to be given to us. We have to take it.
True.
But the question I was asking Afi, and he said there were two options under Dominica law.
The second one is the what we call the real estate option, and these projects are designated and listed. In fact, even on the website, there are 7 real estate projects currently as approved projects. These are all in the tourism sector.
I remember having a look at your regulations, your citizenship by investment regulations, and I think they are 2014, and they speak, based on my understanding of them, of 3 options. Section 7 specifically speaks of 3 options. One of the options is in the case of purchase of real estate and whoever is going to own the company and so forth. The second option is investing in an approved project. And the third option is the contribution option. So it seems to me, from my recollection of having read your regulations, which go back to 2014, that there are 3 options and not 2.
There are 2 options. This is the revised thing, and this is what is on the current website. Option 1 and option 2. As I just described, there are only 2 options. A list, and that is why when we heard our Prime Minister refer to the housing option, his words exactly, it came as a surprise, and then he clarified that this was an option available only to and through Montreal management, and so it appears that Montreal management has been managing a portion of the CBI which is off the radar, which is not included in the official website, not included as an official option, and most interestingly, has allowed Montreal to undersell the other 2 options, because there are persons who are actively engaged, as you would know, in the tourism real estate option, who are now noting a decline in the uptake of their investment offerings under particularly option 2, but also under option 1, which is the direct purchase, because it appears, and we say appear because it had, when asked, the head of Montreal management refused to answer. He says, "What price are you offering? What is the minimum investment required on your housing option?" Because the minimum investment for direct purchase is 100,000 US. The minimum investment for the real estate option relating to tourism and a few other areas is $200,000. This is in addition to the fees and other things that have to be paid and so forth. But there has been no disclosure as to whether or not there's a minimum option. So it appears to us, and this is speculation for now, but it appears that passports and citizenship privileges that are offered as investment incentives under the housing option, which is an unofficial option, could very well be at bargain basement prices and could in fact be partial explanation for why the two official options are experiencing reduced uptake over the last year and a year and a half as far as their particular options are concerned. And that is part of the question now. That is a new question that is being asked about disclosure on the Montreal management housing option. There is an escrow account. It was spoken to by the Prime Minister. He said these funds for housing are held in escrow and are managed by Montreal management. Mm-hmm. We don't know where, don't know how much. So there have been questions. How much is it? How much has been disbursed? How much is left? And then so architects and engineers have been doing, if you will, reverse calculations on actual value. They've looked at the 360 houses odd that have been built, or apartments that have been built by Montreal management, and tried to do calculations of square foot based on prevailing Dominica cost per square foot of construction of that type. And we cannot get past $156 million worth of housing. When in fact, what's missing, even by the Prime Minister's own admission, is something closer to $1 billion EC dollars, which he says, had he arranged for that to be put into the budget and the reported as the other amounts were, we would have had a $2 billion budget. So that's where we are.
So Ati, there's a question here for you from John Kinnison. So his question is, so who runs Montreal management and who are their shareholders?
We don't know who they are. We just know the name. So Anthony Hayden is the Chief Executive Officer of Montreal Management. His offices are located in Dubai. There are parts of the operation, we understand, also in Toronto, Canada. They have a shadow operation here in Dominica, which generally tend to be of engineering types. But the person who runs the company is a gentleman called Anthony Hayden. And he, as far as we know, has never submitted. There's no paperwork. There's no disclosure like there is on the other projects, on the other people handling the real estate options. We know who they are. We know who comprises the CEOs, who are their shareholders, etc., etc. But in this particular case, we have no disclosure. So I cannot answer John's question beyond that point.
But let me point out something else, right? Let me point out something else that became very honest. I saw this company doing an interview with an international entity on the same issue in Dominica. And part of what they highlighted was that they were supporting, what's the Prime Minister's wife's name?
Melissa Faucon-Skerritt.
Melissa's foundation.
Yes, yes.
And they said that they were the only organized charity in Dominica. So I had to ask, where's Lions? Where's Rotary? Because, I mean, and from the time I saw that, I had my question marks.
Of course.
Don't you know that as an international organization, that if you're going to be supporting the Prime Minister's wife's charity, that people are going to raise questions?
And she's a candidate. She's a named candidate in the next election. Actually.
Exactly. So I mean, it is going to be seen that way. So no serious international organization could tell me that they overlook that and that they're innocent when it comes to that. None. If you want to, as they say, they want to give back. There are charities like, as I call them, Lions, Rotary, even the Salvation Army, right? But don't tell me you're supporting the Prime Minister's charity and I'm supposed to accept that as being innocent. No.
They are
somebody else.
there are dozens of worthy non-profit charitable organizations that are contributed to by the President's Fund, the Prime Minister's Fund, by various other sources, etc. Yeah, the disabled and physically challenged, the elderly, the homeless. There are all sorts of wonderful opportunities, but he chose one.
Can't be innocent.
Okay. So John responded. Yeah. So John responded to Athy and he said, "Sounds shady." Meanwhile, Dwyer, you have a comment. Shady, yes. He said it sounds shady.
Okay.
Dwyer, there's a comment to you from Ronald Joseph, and he says, Section 76 of our Constitution makes provisions for all revenues or monies received, whether these revenues or monies are for special purposes, are to be entered into a consolidated fund. Therefore, all of the funds from CBI should be accounted for in the fund.
Bad logic. That's poor logic.
I understand the logic side of that, Dwyer, but I think.
So you come and invest. You come and invest in a beer factory in Barry. That anything to do with the consolidated fund? No, man, no. That's a
different thing. I think the clincher really has to be that this is a public sector driven investment strategy, because it is the country through the government that has decided on a strategy for using its citizenship as an incentive to attract investors. That makes it different.
No, I understand.
That makes it different.
I understand that. I understand the preciousness of the passport. And I understand that the government must have an understanding with the developer. You need to raise $100 million to get the project done. And this is the amount of citizenships we will allow for it. And there must be a process of checks and balances and certification to make sure that that process flows along seamlessly or as seamlessly as possible and transparently to conclusion. But the money that is being paid by the applicant to the developer to purchase Unit 1 or Unit 50, the only interest the government has in that money is to make sure that it goes into the bricks and mortar so that the customer can get what he or she pays for. And when those conditions are met, and I'm sure your regulations have that, then the approvals can be given for the citizenship to be granted. Outside of that, this is a private transaction in which the government has no interest in the price. If the price is above the legal threshold, then that is more profit for the developer. That money does not go into the consolidated fund. That cannot go into the consolidated fund.
I would disagree, because I think the product being sold is still a state asset.
So, you're not going to win that argument.
But I've won it already, because
you lost.
How?
Okay. Carry it somewhere then. Carry it somewhere to win it.
No. I mean, what I'm saying to you is, you said if the price, you're saying the person can sell the product for whatever price they want, as long as it goes into bricks and mortar.
I didn't say that.
That's what I understood you to say.
No. The government has a minimum price.
Yes.
In order for the transaction to qualify for economic citizenship.
Right.
The developer can sell above that minimum price.
That is what is anathema to me. Because what you're selling is a passport. It's citizenship.
No.
And
you're selling a unit. And the government is encouraging the investment and the transaction.
The government is allowing you to raise the money for your project by marketing, selling its citizenship, the citizenship of the country.
And the government gets its share of the money
The
out
government,
of it.
yes, and that is why, and the reason why the government has to be concerned about the total package is that the product being used to attract the investment, otherwise it is the country's citizenship and passport, and that is more than enough.
And
for the government to be able to say, okay, the money's going into this fund. That's what Eugenia did. She said every dollar goes into one fund, and I designate my attorney general to work with you, the project developer, to make sure that you always have access to the money you need to do your bricks and mortar.
How many
Dwyer,
citizenship investments she got?
Excuse me?
How many economic citizenship investments did she succeed in getting?
Where the only one she got was for the Layo River Hotel. That's the only one. And because she ended up having somebody who was not straight, somebody who was quite a crooked person, and that is what you want to protect the country for. Otherwise, you'll have rascals, international rascals, taking your passport, selling it for as much as they can get, getting as rich as they can get, and the country will get the minimum. That's not fair.
Not if you do it properly.
Well,
not if you do it properly. Not if you do it properly. But that money that the buyer pays to the developer for the unit, that is the developer's money. That's the buyer's money. It goes into escrow for certification of completion, and that is the developer's money. That's not the government's money.
That cannot be, Dwyer. You and I will. Let's just agree to disagrey.
Okay,
let's just agree
I'm glad
to
that we have this.
It will be tested in court one day.
The day we start selling passports at any price, we might as well go back to pre-emancipation.
I didn't say any price. I didn't say any price.
Well, that's what it is.
I was just going to say.
Let's hear Margaret.
No, I was just going to add. So Ronald Joseph responded and he said, passports are the properties of the state. Funds exchanged for these passports belong to the state.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the state with the developer, the state with the developer will do the project.
So the state will do the project?
The state with the developer will ensure that there's a smooth access to the resources.
You're not going to get any developers. That's not going to work.
Well,
go ahead.
Are there people who have had investments in Dominica who didn't necessarily put monies in, but were given passports to develop their property?
Who didn't put money in, but were given passports? There have been several people who have been given passports. I don't know if there were also people who made investments in the country, no?
No. Like I have a project. You say you could have 100 passports to develop your project. Right? Who, at the end of the day, so I go off and I attract the monies for the passport as an investment. And I put it into my project.
Right.
That's what you're saying, Dwyer?
Yes. But you don't get the passports up front, you know. There's a certification process.
In our case, the developer gets the passport up front.
Do you know
the range was given 800.
That's what I want to make you
range was given 800 passports. That's what I'm saying. I want Dwyer to understand. Dwyer needs to understand. There are different processes in the island. Range development was given 800 passports and told go and raise your money.
Hold on a sec. Given 800 blank passports?
Given 800 passports we used to travel. We used to travel, our chief immigration officer, somebody from the registry would travel twice a month to the Middle East to do the necessaries in the Middle East to the people whom the passport was sold.
Let me illustrate this to you. In Antigua right now is a similar problem where 800 passports were allotted to this Chinese billionaire.
Okay.
Right? For the same thing. But before the passports got to him, he was arrested back in China. Today, the passports are the question of that same confusion that's going on in Antigua as to the passports. Because somebody seemed to have co-opted from what is happening. Somebody seemed in the process to have co-opted these passports, knowing that they were supposed to be out there. And I guess you'll hear the end of the story as to exactly what happened. That's what the police commission and all
Jerry,
that.
if anything like that happens, it will be in breach of the law of the country and in breach of the regulations. The passports are supposed to be issued by the government on an individual basis when the conditions are met, when the unit has reached a certain stage of development, issued by the government, not handed wholesale to a potential developer.
We are pointing out to you where the gaps are. And what I just said
well,
to you
maybe
fact,
there. Maybe
right?
there, okay.
That this billionaire was agreed to give him these passports, which he obviously put on his briefcase and take back to India.
Well, whoever gave him those passports needs to rot in a jail cell, because that is not the way to do it.
I agree. But we pointed out to you.
No, I am on board with that. But I am telling you also, and I'm not coming off this boat, because I'm sure every court of law in the world would agree with me. If you are doing a development and I'm doing an application to own it, and one of the perks of it is that I'll become eligible to be an economic citizen of the country, the price I pay to the developer is the price between me and him. The government fees are another matter, and the delivery of the passport happens based on conditions that have to be satisfied before the delivery can be effected. That is the extent of the government's involvement, and that is the law, and that is the fair way for it to work.
Who does the due diligence?
On whom?
On the applicant.
Well, the government does it.
Absolutely. Why does the government have to be the one to do it?
Well, who else should do it?
Because they have to protect the integrity of the Dominican citizenship in this case.
Not only that, they have to protect the integrity of the source of funds of the applicant.
That's the integrity, the total integrity. I agree. We agreed. I have no problem there. So that if it is our responsibility as a country to make sure that vandals and vagabonds don't get a hold of our citizenship under cover of a legitimate CBI program, then we have to actually stay with the process through its entirety until, as you said earlier, the project is done.
I agree.
Yes,
I agree, but the money is not the government's money.
Final topic, but let me say this, right? I mentioned it a while ago. We have somebody, Rachel, joining us. I mentioned it a while ago. When the government quotes, and I asked a question earlier on purpose, when the government quotes its capital development project, I asked, is monies from the Citizenship by Investment program part of that? Remember I asked that question earlier?
Yes.
Yes. And the answer I got was yes. So is it indeed? Yeah. Though, because they're seen as foreign direct investment.
Yes.
Like it or not, they're seen as foreign direct investment. And if they're foreign direct investment, they go to the government.
Oh, really? But foreign direct investment goes to the government?
Sorry, not to the government, to the country. Let me say to the country. So it is money attracted. You see, this business up to the government is my thing is the country's money.
Is the country's money?
No.
It's the country's money, Dwyer. Whose money is it?
If I come and pay you $500,000 for your house, and the $500,000 is your money, the stamp duty that we pay the government.
That's a different thing. It's my house. I have title to my house, and I'm selling it to you. I don't have title to my passport.
I build up. No, I know that. No, none of us does.
So
the passport doesn't belong to any of us.
So it belongs to all of us.
If you are doing a development in Dominica or St. Kitts, and you require $100 million to do it, and the agreement is, the approval is, because you've been checked out too and you are clean, you have to deliver $100 units, and whatever number of passports that go with it.
Mm-hmm.
The sale, the proceeds of sale of the units are the property of the developer, not of the government.
Dwyer, I get it, but I made the point earlier, and I asked the question on purpose. When the government quotes capital development projects and money is coming through the CBI part of that capital development project?
Money from the contribution option, which goes into this diversification fund, is used by these governments for subventions, for budgetary support and other projects. That is where the grant money comes in to the government accounting system.
All right,
From
let's leave
the
it because
contribution.
clearly there's some.
But no, but
Dwyer has
no,
some-
but that's I have no problem with that assessment of that's our option one, and it's clear. It's the other option two that where there is a difference of view. In fact,
And I don't mean to irritate you. I don't mean to irritate you, but I will bet you that there's an option 3 as well in your law.
Not in our law.
Okay, check it out.
Not in our law.
Okay,
That one has just, it's a ghost option. It's just been created.
It's not no.
You
Check
know what
the
is
regulation.
guys,
Check the
guys,
regulations.
what is interested in this is that this has been something that has been around in many instances. In the case of St. Kitts is what, nearly 40 years, right? What?
1984.
Right, 1984. And only now we are having clarity in some of these discussions. So could you imagine what has happened?
But Jerry,
no clarity.
Jerry, how old is the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Constitution?
39 years, going to be 40 this year.
How much clarity is there in the body politic about your constitution?
Nah, this is different than the Constitution. This is something that is every day happening because it is a major revenue source.
The Constitution governs our everyday happenings.
I agree.
Yeah.
But people don't see it as that tactile issue every day.
Oh, really?
But
maybe this is one of the
citizenship
problems.
investment program is seen like that. But let's leave that because I think we have really ventilated this, and this discussion is good for both sides.
It's been a good discussion.
That was nice.
So that people listening to us get a better sense of it because I'm saying to them.
But Afi is very gracious in defeat, eh?
Huh?
Afi is very gracious in defeat.
I'm not hearing that.
As the elder of the group,
I respect you.
As the elder of the group, I have to have respect for the younger whippersnappers. And
I like that.
I mean, you will. We have a saying here: with age comes wisdom. You will age. You will get a little smarter and more and clearer about what you see, and you will understand that we have a responsibility to protect our legacy of struggle for
Old
ownership.
McDonald's farm.
Yeah, before you go to Old McDonald's farm, before you do that, we have some comments again. So we had a comment from Juliana Corriete. Forgive me if I mispronounced your name. She says, it's the state money is to fix the country, not to put in your pocket. And then there's someone by the name of Yasan Tafari. He said, I'm loving this discussion. We need to have more of these discussions here on St. Kitts and Nevis. I think we need to stop give away our lands. And then Ronald Joseph said, but how could both the proceeds from the sale of passports and the units of the real estate belong to the investor? Does that make sense?
Well, who said that?
No, he didn't. We haven't. That has not been said.
Right. Yeah. Ronald. That's what Ronald Joseph was asking.
Okay.
That's maybe how you understood it, but no, that hasn't been said. Definitely not.
Yeah.
All right, let's move because I say I'm keeping my eye on the clock, and we have to go to Old McDonald had a prison cell. Listen, folks. I think that we ought to applaud what has happened in Trinidad and Tobago over the past week, like it or not. That the security forces, the police service in particular, and the DPP, moved to arrest a sitting minister of government. That to me gives me hope in this region.
Yep.
Up to you guys.
I agree.
Yeah. I agree with
Well,
that.
we're looking to do that here around the CBI program. Because we missing $1 billion. The Prime Minister has agreed with us that there's $1 billion missing, and he's in cahoots with this guy Anthony Hayden from Montreal thing, because nobody was watching the store, and so they took it and ran, and we're going to get all of them, and we're going to get all of them. All of them.
But seriously, I mean, but the case in this of Miss Marlene McDonald in Trinidad and Tobago, who was the deputy leader of the PNM and also held significant positions. This is the third time this woman has been involved in what is seen as criminal.
Wow.
Folks, answer me the question. You're the Prime Minister. Who do you think really is responsible here? Let me go to the age. Age brings wisdom. Dwyer, this is yours. What do you say on this?
Dwyer got bugs.
You have to fall in line. You're next in line.
No, but our Prime Minister is now on his third strike. He's had 2 strikes before. There was a what we call a bin bobble, and there was a fertilizer bubble, and now we have a CBI bubble. So 3 strikes on you, out.
No, but you see, the point I want to make in this one is that the Prime Minister appoints this woman for a search. In fact, the second time she was appointed, she lasted 48 hours.
So they knew the product.
Yes.
Why would the Prime Minister come and reappoint her again?
Yeah.
Right, it says a whole lot about him as a manager.
Thank you.
There are a whole lot of questions about him as a manager.
Why we use such nice terms to describe those people? They're not managers, they're gangsters. They're not managers. Let's be straight up.
Even gangsters need to have certain leadership skills, because listen, if you can't manage your fellow gangsters, they will oost you. You'll be out.
You're in trouble.
They'll chew you up and spit you out.
For sure,
so
I agree.
It still says a lot about him.
It does, yeah.
No, but seriously, let's go close to the okay, hold on. Dwyer is back. Let's see if we get him back. Dwyer, I was appealing to you for an answer as the person with the most wisdom in this group, as we just heard.
No, the person who will end up one day being the...
Oh, I see.
Not yet. He's working on it.
Who you all talking about?
You.
I just got back in. But as soon as I leave, you start to badmouth me?
Yeah, we said one day you'll be wise. You'll be wiser. So that's why Jerry wants to ask you a question.
That is my prayer, but I will bet you 2 mangoes. I will bet you 2 mangoes, okay, and a plate of titiwi, that you have 3 options in Dominica. And that if you go to any court, what I'm telling you will be substantiated by a court ruling. The money you pay to the investor is his money, not the government's money.
Well, the courts have always been on the wrong side of justice.
Okay.
And Ati, we've gone to McDonald's.
Let's go to McDonald's. What you say, Jerry?
Dwyer, is this?
What you say?
You're the Prime Minister, right? This is somebody whom question has been raised on 2 times before. Would you reappoint her? And if you did, who should take the rap?
Reappoint her. When?
Reappoint her as a minister.
When?
Sir.
Listen.
Anytime.
After this?
Against her.
No, man. No. No, even if she's innocent, Jerry, even if she's innocent, she's attracted sufficient fire. There'll be sufficient suspicion in the community that maybe somebody has tampered with the judicial system to get her off. So there'll be too much doubt to allow her executing the duties of a minister.
Why?
With a free and fair and clear hand. If he wants to help her in some other way, he can find a way. Maybe with a friend in the private sector. but not at the public expense and not as a member of the cabinet.
But that is what has happened, and not just once, not once, twice. That's the point. The second time he appointed her, her appointment lasted 48 hours. I mean, this to me, I don't know, but I'm sorry, but Prime Minister,
It's an indictment.
I've lost confidence in judgment. Yeah, serious confidence in judgment.
But you see, he may want to say that he has exhausted every option and now he has nothing left. Just like Gaston Brown did in the case of Assad Michael.
What happened to Assad, by the way, Dwyer? They let him go?
Well, I don't know about that, but Gaston gave Assad perhaps every chance Gaston thought he could give Assad.
True.
And then in the end he said, well, you know, by your own doing, you've gone. You know, enjoy the rest of your days.
Yeah,
so
but
maybe Raul is doing the same thing.
Dwyer, you still ran him as a candidate in the last election. I have a problem with that. Well, not just the Prime Minister alone here now.
Jerry,
people who voted him.
Jerry, you and I are maybe a little too idealistic for the world of politics. Okay? If you think it was going to be easy for Gaston Brown to prevent Assad from running in the last election, then maybe you need to sit at Athy's feet, take the chance and go to Dominica, risk the lockup in Dominica, so you could learn something from Athy. No, the prime ministers do not act in any precipitous way when it comes to things like this. They give you enough rope to hang yourself. And then nobody can blame them politically because you've hung yourself.
Do you think this is what happened here?
I believe Rowley did that. I believe that's what Rowley did.
There's another explanation.
Now left to me, this was not, I don't play baseball when it comes to ethics. You're out once, you're out.
You're out.
I don't play baseball.
At the end of the day, with an election due next year, I think Rowley has just compromised his leadership. He might have wanted to give her political rope to hang herself. But at the end of the day, I believe this is going to really work against him.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Jerry. I couldn't see how it could not.
No, it took close to elections, man.
Have you guys examined the possibility that this lady McDonald has information on Rowley?
No,
well, you know, it's funny that you said that, because I was going to add earlier when I said, you know, as a manager, he needs to be called to task. I was going to say, unless there's something else we don't know. Because I don't get it. And so
that's the situation in many groups that have been together for a while, is that they get to know some really nasty stuff about each other, and that it's mutually assured protection. So if you don't rat on me, I won't rat on you. If you don't rat on me, I won't rat on you. And that's it. And you know, who has more information and more dastardly information, I guess, ends up being the big honcho. You know, I mean, these are not nice people. I mean, that's why Dwyer is not in active politics anymore. And that's why I didn't last more than, you know, a few months in active politics, because there's some really grovelly, nasty things that happen in politics in the Caribbean.
That is true.
It would make your skin crawl.
Yes, but it is, the people have accepted it. I saw a story just before we came to things in Trinidad, where this woman was criticizing the commissioner of police because he, 3 weeks ago, was actually in Trinidad at the time, 3 weeks ago, one of the big gangsters was killed. He, his wife, and two of his bodyguards was killed. And she's blaming the commissioner of police for not protecting her.
Yeah, I saw that.
No, we live in some strange times, you know. We live in some very strange times.
You know, I mean, Jerry, that's something we need to do a program on. Who is leading whom? When you have the leader of a country bringing in known gangsters, gun gangsters, into the state house for cocktails, he himself serving them hors d'oeuvres and drinks.
What happened?
I give you one guess.
I guess.
Give you one guess.
No, Atty.
You call me, I go whistle.
Oh no.
Absolutely. When you have the wife of that guy who's a candidate posing in her public promotional materials with known gangsters. We're not this is not a game anymore. This is a deadly kind of engagement.
Ati, look at St. Kitts now. The story is out that the government is probably paying criminals not to kill. Am I right, Dwyer?
Some people are saying so. The police, the government is saying no, that's not the case. And I would be inclined to agree with what the government is saying. What the government has done, and this initiative came from the gangsters, They were tired with the shooting of each other and the fighting. And they took the initiative for peace among themselves.
Okay.
And they were engaged by the authorities who are trying to facilitate. So there has to be some give and take.
Yeah,
I don't have all of the details. I don't have all the details because toxic dysfunctional behavior is not something that is unique to poor people in the Caribbean. In fact, most of the toxic behavior you see coming from people wearing suits and fancy dresses in the Caribbean. I believe in giving people a chance to redeem themselves and so forth. And I think this,
I'll tell you this, Dwyer.
Yeah, sorry.
When I put up that story this evening, somebody sent me a message from another Caribbean country. I wouldn't say where, but it came out of prison. That yes, it is true.
No, I don't believe it though. I believe the government is trying to find ways to assist them, to get them re-assimilated, to maybe fund them in ways of doing little business and so forth. But in terms of paying them not to commit crime, direct cash payments, okay, I'm going to pay you not to be a criminal. I would have a hard time believing that.
I will tell you this, right? I'll tell you this. Do you know how this whole gun thing started in Jamaica?
Politicians.
Exactly. It was the government who used to arm the criminals to enforce their positions. And then and they used to take back the guns after. In 1980, the gangsters never returned the guns. And then they started to kill. And what could the government tell them?
Yeah, I don't believe this situation is.
No, I'm not saying it is the same. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's the same. What I'm making the point is that at a governmental level, for example, right? It's interesting that Mr. McDonald is a representative of one of the most crime-ridden areas. She is the minister. She's the representative. She loves. What does that tell me? That here the people have somebody who is their representative gone to prison too, like them.
But there's no doubt about it, Jerry, that there is the need for some real creative and inventive and brave initiatives in dealing with the gangster issue in our islands. And I like the sense of the initiative that Dwyer was talking about. If it came from these fellas themselves saying, hey, look, enough. Let's fix this.
And I think,
that would be remarkable.
I can say this with 100% confidence of it being correct, because I have been very close to a lot of these young men and their families. And they came to me first And that's why they came to me first. Before they were engaged in these discussions with the authorities, a group of them, the leaders, met with me twice at their own initiative. And they said, this is what we want to do. We are going to need some help. We don't want anybody to betray us. Okay, we know you from a long time because this is something I tried to do 14 years ago. I had all of the gangs come together in a high school auditorium, put it live on national TV, and had them shake hands and said, we are going to begin the healing and the peace process. So this is an initiative by the young men.
Yes, right.
And they need to be encouraged with it. But you have to let them know that you're not giving away the shop. There has to be some discipline and some abiding by the law and some sincere commitment and evidence of wanting to change for the better. But they can't do it on their own.
That's right.
But I know this is their initiative. And one of the things they were concerned about, Afi, they did not want the politicians to like steal a match on them and give the public impression that it's the politicians who are doing it.
Exactly.
But let us all commend Dwyer, because Dwyer, for people to have that kind of confidence in you says a lot about how you are regarded, and I think that is important. And we in this group are happy to have somebody like you know, with us, because that's what we need. It's that kind of level-headedness and contact that we need. Because some people are so far gone in time, they'd like to turn back, you know. But
of course,
they see no way back unless they see somebody who they could throw them a lifeline. Good. So congratulations. I really appreciate that. And for
man, it's what we do. It's what we do. I'm sure you guys do that in your countries too.
Yeah, you have to.
These young men have to have faith in somebody, you know. They used to come to my office. They used to come to my office sometimes just to sleep because they're afraid to sleep outside. And they trust me. I'm telling you. One of them told me once, he said, Mr. Astaphan, he came by me 3 Fridays before he was shot. He came by me and said, every time I walk out of my yard, I feel like I'm a dead man. 3 weeks later, he was dead.
Wow.
They knew they could speak to me. They knew that I would do my best to help. In fact, when I was the Minister of National Security, I went into every gang hole in St. Kitts. Every gang hole I went into. On two occasions, I thought. On one occasion, I was sure I was going to get killed. And happily, I was wrong. Yeah, and on the second occasion, I walked out of there high on weed. And I didn't smoke any. It was a cloud of weed. You know, like when you're in England and there's a cloud for 5 days, you can't see the sun. You know, these young men need a chance. Of course, you don't give away the shop to them. But you give them a chance. They're bright and creative people. It's just that they make a wrong turn in life. And we have to give people a second chance. I mean, Rowley gave McDonald 3 chances. McDonald is no better than those young gangsters. She was.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Was.
Exactly.
That's right.
But that's my sermon for the night, Afi.
Good testimony.
Here's my amen. I want you to learn to apply that same principle to the CBI.
Okay.
That's what she was doing.
These guys are not
I love Afi.
good.
I love Afi, man.
Yeah, man. After all, this is one of the best groups we have. We'll tell Beverly that we didn't miss her.
I miss her. No.
No. What's that? You know.
No, boy. No matter what. I go tell Beverly what you say.
Exactly.
All right, then. Okay, good.
All right.
I think we should wrap this though. I know we started late, and probably we should. Margaret could just give a Georgia indication that we think we're wrapping this. But we look at three issues tonight. Basically, the whole question of the additional monies that Grenada is seeking, and how that could relate to their whole debt to GDP and their debt. obviously there's probably more that will come out on that issue.
Yeah.
The CBI money, which created quite a bit of discussion. And at the end of the day, however you cut that CBI story, all is not clear and fair and straight about what is happening. And I think because they closed down the website, the opposition asked for the financial secretary to give a report. They sent the financial secretary on leave. There's just too much that has been happening that has left things. You hear one side, they tell you one thing. When you go back and check, it's something else. No.
And you know what solves that, Jerry? Accountability and transparency.
True. Absolutely.
Just show the
right.
people what you're doing. Then you get rid of all of the suspicion and the malice and the bad feelings and the anger and so. And we could get focus our energies on building our communities and our country. So much toxicity, man.
True.
Yep.
And a lot of it is driven by the partisan political side of things. But I mean,
absolutely, that's how they want it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But let me say thanks again to all of you, Rachel. I know you didn't say a word, but you're sitting there. Thanks for joining us. For all the members of all the other suspects, thanks for joining us. Dwyer fell off and came back in. Thanks to the persistence. George, as usual, thanks for the controls and for everyone. Until next time, again, let me apologize. Beverly has had something she has to deliver tomorrow, and she couldn't join us today because she has to finish it tonight. So everyone else, thanks for joining us. And until
all right. Good night, folks.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.